Today we have a story about Grace Holloway, a humble housemaid whose quiet courage in the face of unspeakable darkness would expose secrets that had been buried for far too long. This is her account, recovered from the forgotten archives of Graystone County, a testament to one woman's fight against a horror that wore the mask of respectability. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing and becoming part of our community. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing from our amazing viewers all around the world. From the recovered journal of Grace Holloway, Housemaid, dated October 80, found among uncatalogued documents in the basement of the former Ashford Manor, Graystone County. My name is Grace Holloway. I am 26 years of age, born in Virginia, and I have been employed these past 8 months as housemaid to Mr. Jonathan Ashford of Graystone County. I write this account by stolen candlelight, knowing full well that Mr. Ashford does not permit the use of tallow after 9 in the evening. My hands shake as I set these words to paper, but I must record what I have witnessed. Should anything happen to me, perhaps someone will find this and understand. The town of Graystone sits in a valley, where fog settles thick between the hills. Few travelers pass through without specific purpose. It is a place where everyone knows everyone, where reputations are built over generations, and where certain families hold power that extends far beyond their property lines. The Ashford estate lies 3 miles from town proper, a grand manor house of dark wood and stone, surrounded by acres of timber forests that stretch toward the mountains. Mr. Ashford is a widower of some 45 years, a man of considerable wealth derived from timber contracts and railway investments. In town, he is regarded as a pillar of the community. He sits in the front pew of the Baptist church every Sunday. He speaks softly and dresses impeccably. He donates generously to the orphanage. When he smiles at you, his teeth are very white and very straight, but the smile never quite reaches his pale blue eyes. There are 4 of us in service at the manor: myself, responsible for the main floor, and Mr. Ashford's private study; Evelyn Monroe, a woman of 30-some years who manages the kitchen with quiet efficiency, despite the weariness that lives in her face; Thomas Wright, the groundskeeper, a man of few words who tends the gardens and maintains the property; and Ruth Daniels, an older woman who cleans the upper floors and the guest chambers that no guests ever occupy. We are paid fair wages, better than most positions available to people of our standing. We receive adequate meals and lodging in the servants' quarters, a small building behind the main house. The work is demanding but not unusual for such an estate. By all accounts, I should consider myself fortunate. But there are rules here, so many rules. They were explained to me on my first day by Ruth, who took me aside before Mr. Ashford arrived home that evening. She spoke in a whisper, though we were alone in the servants' hall. "You must never enter the west wing after sunset," she told me, her fingers gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "You must never ask Mr. Ashford about his late wife. You must never speak to him unless he addresses you first. You must complete your tasks in absolute silence. You must never, under any circumstances, read any document you find in his study while cleaning, and you must always account for your time." This last rule seemed strangest of all. Each evening, we were required to submit a written record of our daily activities to Mr. Ashford. Every task, every moment, accounted for in his ledger. He would review these records in his study after dinner, and woe to anyone whose accounting did not satisfy him. "What happens if the accounting is wrong?" I asked Ruth. She released my wrist and turned away. "Just make certain it never is." In those first weeks, I learned the rhythm of the house. I learned to move through the rooms like a ghost, silent and unnoticed. I learned which floorboards creaked and how to avoid them. I learned that Mr. Ashford would sometimes stand perfectly still in darkened doorways, watching us work, his presence announced only by the faint smell of his pipe tobacco. I learned that Evelyn kept her eyes downcast whenever he entered the kitchen, that Thomas would cease his work entirely and stand at attention, barely breathing, until Mr. Ashford passed, that Ruth had a tremor in her left hand that worsened whenever she heard his footsteps on the stairs. But I told myself these were simply the ways of a particular household, that every employer had their peculiarities, that I should be grateful for steady work and a roof over my head. It was not until the night of October 15th that I began to understand the true nature of the rules. I was finishing my evening duties in the main parlor when I heard a sound from the west wing, a low, rhythmic thumping, like someone beating their fists against a wall. Then silence. Then 3 distinct knocks. I stood frozen, my cleaning rag still in hand. The knocks came again, 3 times, perfectly spaced, deliberate. I moved toward the sound without thinking, my feet carrying me to the forbidden corridor. The west wing was kept locked, always, but the door stood ajar, just barely, just enough. Grace. I turned to find Mr. Ashford standing behind me, though I had heard no footsteps. His smile was gentle, almost paternal. "I believe," he said softly, "that you have forgotten to submit your accounting for the day." My mouth went dry. I was just about to say, "I apologize." "Of course you were." He gestured toward the servants' quarters. "Do attend to it now. And Grace, the west wing door must have blown open in the wind. Best to close it properly. We would not want anything to escape." I closed the door. I wrote my accounting. I lay awake in my narrow bed, listening to Evelyn's quiet weeping in the next room, and I began, for the first time, to wonder what kind of house I had entered. What kind of man smiled so gently while his servants learned to fear the sound of his footsteps? What kind of rules required such perfect, fearful obedience? And what, exactly, was locked in the west wing? 3 days passed after the incident with the west wing door. 3 days of perfect silence, perfect obedience, perfect accounting. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached. I polished silver until I could see my reflection distorted in the curved surfaces. I moved through the manor like smoke, present but invisible. On the morning of October 18th, I made my first mistake. I was cleaning Mr. Ashford's study, as I did every Tuesday and Friday morning. He had left for town on business, and the house felt different in his absence, as though the walls themselves could breathe more freely. The study was a room of dark wood and leather, lined with books I was forbidden to touch. His massive desk dominated the space, its surface always meticulously organized. As I dusted the mantelpiece, my elbow caught the edge of a small stack of papers. They cascaded to the floor in a whisper of scattered pages. My heart seized. I dropped to my knees, gathering them quickly, trying to remember their exact order. But as my hands moved, my eyes caught words on the topmost page. I could not help but read them. Evelyn Monruet, demerits. Failure to account for 17 minutes on October 9th. Spoke without permission on October 12th. Punishment administered October 13th. Below Evelyn's name was another entry. Thomas Wright 5 demerits. Toolshed door left unlocked. Looked directly at employer during morning inspection. Punishment administered October 10th. And below that, in Mr. Ashford's precise, elegant script, Ruth Daniels 12 demerits. Question asked regarding West Wing. Excessive time in washroom. Tear observed during evening accounting. Punishment pending. My hands trembled. These were not mere employment records. There was something else entirely. A catalogue of infractions, real and imagined. A ledger of control. I heard the front door open downstairs. He was not supposed to return until afternoon. My hands moved frantically, shuffling the papers, trying to restore their order. I placed them on the desk and stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, measured. He knew not. Mr. Ashford appeared in the doorway. His coat was still buttoned, his hat still in his hand. He looked at me, then at his desk, then back at me. "Grace," he said, his voice warm as summer honey. "How wonderful to find you working so diligently." "Sir." The papers fell. I was only, of course. He moved past me, so close I could smell the tobacco and mint on his breath. He picked up the pages, examined them, set them down with deliberate care. "Accidents happen. We are all human, are we not?" "Yes, sir." "Tell me, Grace, in your accounting this evening, will you note that you accidentally disturbed my private documents?" I hesitated. Something in his tone made my stomach turn. "Yes, sir, if you wish it." "Oh, I do not wish it, dear girl. I am asking whether you will do it. Honesty is so very important in a household such as this. Without honesty, without accountability, chaos follows. You understand?" "I understand, sir." He tilted his head, studying me like a specimen under glass. "I wonder, you have been with us 8 months now, long enough to appreciate the order we maintain here. The rules exist for everyone's protection, you see. Structure prevents unpleasantness." He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. My late wife did not understand this. She thought the rules were cruel. She thought I was unkind for demanding such precise accounting from our staff. She began to ask questions, to pry into matters that did not concern her. He paused. "She is buried in the family plot now. Such a tragic illness, so sudden." The room felt very cold. Your accounting this evening, Grace. I trust it will be complete and truthful. Yes, sir. Excellent. He smiled that terrible smile. You may go. I left the study on unsteady legs. In the hallway, I found Ruth waiting, her face pale. He knows, she whispered. Knows what? That you saw the ledger. He always knows. She gripped my arm. Tonight, after you submit your accounting, stay in your room. No matter what you hear. Do you understand me? No matter what. That evening, I wrote my accounting with painstaking honesty. Every task, every moment, including the accidental disturbance of Mr. Ashford's papers. My hand shook so badly, I had to rewrite the entry twice to make it legible. I submitted the page to his study and retreated to the servants' quarters. At 10:30, I heard footsteps outside, then a key turning in a lock, then Ruth's door opening. No, Ruth's voice, barely audible. Please, sir. It was not her fault. She did not mean 12 demerits. Ruth, you know the consequences of accumulation. Please, the rules exist for everyone's protection. I sat on my bed, every muscle locked, my hand pressed against my mouth to stifle any sound. I heard Ruth's footsteps going down the path toward the main house, heard the heavy door to the west wing open and close, heard nothing after that. In the morning. Ruth's bed was made with perfect precision, as though she had never slept there at all. Her few possessions remained in place, but Ruth herself did not appear for breakfast. Where is Ruth? I asked Evelyn quietly. Evelyn's hands trembled as she poured coffee. Ruth no longer works here. But her things, Grace. Evelyn's voice was sharp, desperate. Ruth no longer works here. That is all we say. That is all we know. Do you understand? I understood. Mr. Ashford appeared in the kitchen doorway, fresh and smiling. Good morning, ladies. Grace, you will assume Ruth's duties for the upper floors beginning today. I trust this will not be too burdensome. No, sir. Wonderful. He set a piece of paper on the table. Your accounting from last evening was exemplary. So honest, so thorough. You have earned 0 demerits. Keep up this excellent work, and you shall have no troubles here at all. He left us in silence. I picked up the paper he had left behind. It was a new page for the ledger. Grace Holloway, 0 demerits. Below my name, there was space for many, many more entries. And below that, in handwriting I recognized as Ruth's, a single sentence scratched so faintly I almost missed it. The West Wing remembers everything. In the 2 weeks following Ruth's disappearance, I learned to exist in a state of constant vigilance. Every word I spoke was weighed, every movement calculated, every moment accounted for in the evening ledger with meticulous precision. But I also began to notice things. The manor had rhythms, patterns that repeated with unnatural regularity. Every third night, Mr. Ashford would descend to the West Wing at precisely 11 o'clock. I could hear his footsteps from my room, steady and purposeful, followed by the sound of the heavy door opening and closing. He would remain there for exactly 1 hour, never more, never less. Then silence. The servants who had worked at the manor before us, their names, appeared occasionally in fragments. A mention in town, a whispered comment from Thomas, always the same story. They had left suddenly for family reasons, or better opportunities, or simply vanished into the fog one morning. How many have there been? I asked Thomas one afternoon while he tended the garden. Before us, I mean, how many servants? Thomas drove his spade into the earth with more force than necessary. Do not ask questions about what came before. But surely you must wonder. I wonder how to keep my position and my life. Miss Grace, I suggest you do the same. He lowered his voice. But if you must know, I have been here 2 years. In that time, I have seen 7 people come and go from the servants' quarters. None left on good terms. None said proper goodbyes. 7 people in 2 years. What happened to them? The West Wing. He would say no more. I began to watch Mr. Ashford more carefully. In town, he was the image of respectability. He tipped his hat to ladies. He discussed business with other men in measured, intelligent tones. He donated to the church fund for a new bell. But I noticed how people stepped aside when he walked past. How conversations would falter and die when he entered the general store. How the Reverend's wife would not quite meet his eyes when he wished her good morning. They knew something. The whole town knew something. One Sunday after service, I lingered near the church steps while Mr. Ashford spoke with the Reverend. An older woman approached me, her face weathered and kind. "You work at the Ashford place," she said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am." Near 9 months. Something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps, or pity. That is longer than most manage. She glanced toward Mr. Ashford, then back to me. My daughter worked there once, 5 years ago. She was a good girl, obedient, quiet. What happened to her? She wrote me a letter saying she was leaving for Chicago, but the handwriting was wrong, and she never wrote again. The woman's eyes filled with tears. The sheriff said there was nothing to investigate, said girls run off all the time. But I know my daughter. She would not have left without saying goodbye properly. I am so sorry. Be careful, child. Keep your accounting perfect. Do not accumulate demerits. And if you get the chance, she pressed something into my hand. Run. It was a small iron key, old and rusted. Before I could ask what it unlocked, Mr. Ashford was beside us, his smile bright and terrible. Grace, how lovely to see you speaking with Mrs. Patterson. I do hope you are not troubling her with complaints about your position. No, sir. We were only discussing the weather. I am certain. He placed his hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm. Mrs. Patterson, you really must not fill our dear Grace's head with old stories. The past is the past, is it not? Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. Of course, Mr. Ashford, forgive me. We rode back to the manor in silence, the key burning in my pocket. That night, I examined it by candlelight. It was small, the kind that might fit a desk drawer or a cabinet. I thought of the ledger in Mr. Ashford's study, the catalogue of demerits and punishments. I thought of 7 servants in 2 years. I thought of Ruth's empty bed. The next morning, while Mr. Ashford was occupied with business in his study, I approached Evelyn in the kitchen. Have you ever tried to leave? I asked quietly, her hands stilled over the bread dough. Once. What happened? I made it to town, got as far as the train station. I had my bag packed, my ticket purchased. She resumed kneading, her movements mechanical. He was waiting for me on the platform, smiling. He said the most terrible thing. What did he say? He said, Evelyn, you forgot to submit your accounting for the day. How careless. I shall have to add those demerits to your ledger. Then he took my arm and walked me back to the wagon. The whole town watched. Nobody said a word. How many demerits do you have now? 11. Her voice broke. 1 more and I go to the West Wing. 1 more and I end up like Ruth and all the others. Evelyn, we have to do something. We cannot simply do not speak of it. She gripped my wrist. Do not even think of it. The walls have ears here. Everything gets back to him. Everything. But that night, something changed. I was cleaning the upper hallway when I heard a sound from one of the unused guest rooms. A faint scratching, like fingernails on wood. I stood perfectly still, listening. Scratch, scratch. 3 deliberate marks. Then silence. 3 marks. Just like the knocking I had heard from the West Wing. I tried the door locked. I pulled out Mrs. Patterson's key. My hand shook as I fitted it into the lock. It turned. The room beyond was empty, save for a single bed and a writing desk. But on the walls, scratched into the plaster in dozens of places, were names. Mary Catherine Welsetine, Foster 1893, James Hartley 18, Mitchell 1895, Ruth, Daniels 1897, Bellow. Each name were marks, tally marks, counting up to 12. 12 demerits. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I fled the room, locking it behind me, and pressed myself against the wall in the darkened hallway. Mr. Ashford passed within inches of me, carrying a lamp. He paused outside the very room I had just left, tried the handle, found it locked. Curious, he murmured to himself. Then he continued down the hall. In my room that night, I could not sleep. I lay in the darkness, thinking of the names on the wall, thinking of the pattern. 12 demerits, always 12. And then the West Wing. I rose from my bed and moved to the window. From here, I could just see the west wing of the manor, its windows dark and empty. But as I watched, a light appeared in one of them, a single candle, flickering. Then another window lit, then another. 5 windows in total, each with its own small light. 5 people currently missing. As I watched, a figure moved past one of the windows. It was too distant to make out clearly, but the shape was wrong, the movements too stiff, too mechanical. The figure stopped and turned toward my window. Even from this distance, I knew it was looking directly at me. I stepped back from the glass, my heart racing. In the morning, there would be questions. I would need to account for my time, explain the unlocked door, justify my presence in the upper hallway after hours. I would need to be perfect in my explanation, because I now had 3 demerits in the ledger, and I had finally begun to understand that the West Wing was not a punishment, it was a collection. The morning after I saw the lights in the West Wing, I found a notice pinned to the servants' hall door. It was written in Mr. Ashford's precise script. All staff will assemble in the main parlour this evening at 8 o'clock for monthly review. Monthly review. Neither Evelyn nor Thomas would meet my eyes during breakfast. What is monthly review? I finally asked. Thomas spoke without looking up from his plate. He reads the ledger aloud. Every demerit, every infraction, every punishment administered or pending. Why? To remind us, Evelyn whispered. To remind us what happens when we fail to maintain proper order. That day passed with agonizing slowness. I performed my duties with shaking hands, terrified of making even the smallest error. Every moment was accounted for in my mental record, ready to be transcribed with perfect accuracy. At 8 o'clock, we gathered in the parlour. Mr. Ashford sat in his high-backed chair near the fireplace, the ledger open on his lap. He looked at each of us in turn, his expression benevolent, almost fatherly. "Thank you all for your continued service," he began. "These monthly reviews are essential to maintaining the harmony of our household. Accountability, as you know, is the foundation of all proper conduct." He opened the ledger. Thomas Wright, current demerits, 6, October 23rd, spoke without permission. October 27th, completed garden work 14 minutes past schedule. November 1st, direct eye contact during inspection. He looked up. "Thomas, you are improving. Last month you had 8. This is commendable progress." Thomas's jaw clenched. "Thank you, sir." Evelyn Monroe, current demerits, 11. A pause. "Evelyn, this is concerning. You are very close to requiring correction." Evelyn's face had gone ashen. "I will do better, sir. I promise. I am certain you will." His voice was gentle, almost kind. "One more infraction, and I am afraid we will need to discuss your future here. You understand?" "Yes, sir." Then his eyes found mine. Grace Holloway, current demerits, for my stomach dropped. 4. I had thought it was 3. October 18th, disturbed private documents. October 29th, spent 19 unaccounted minutes in the upper hallway. He smiled. November 2nd, entered a locked room without permission. He knew, of course he knew. "Grace, I am disappointed. You began with such promise. 0 demerits for your first months, but lately you have become curious. Curiosity is a dangerous quality in a servant. It suggests dissatisfaction with one's proper place. I apologize, sir. It will not happen again. I certainly hope not. You see, I have become rather fond of you. Grace, it would grieve me to see you join the others in the West Wing before your time." Before my time. The words hung in the air like a noose. "Now then." He closed the ledger with a soft thump. "There is one additional matter to discuss. We find ourselves short-staffed with Ruth's departure. I have hired a new girl from town. Her name is Diane, and she will arrive tomorrow to take over the upper floor duties. I trust you will all make her feel welcome and explain our rules clearly. We would not want her to accumulate demerits unnecessarily." After dismissal, I caught Evelyn's arm in the hallway. "We have to warn her," I whispered. "This girl, Diane, we have to tell her what this place really is." "And say what, exactly?" Evelyn's voice was bitter. "That our employer keeps some terrible secret in the West Wing. That servants disappear. Who would believe us? Mr. Ashford is a respected man. We are merely—" She stopped herself. "We are human beings. We have rights. There must be someone in town who would listen, who would investigate. Mrs. Patterson's daughter tried to run. Did that woman tell you what happened after?" "The sheriff declared the daughter a runaway. Case closed. Mr. Ashford made a generous donation to the sheriff's retirement fund the following week." Evelyn pulled her arm free. "The whole town knows. They all know, and they look the other way because he has money and power, and we have neither. Then what do? We survive, Grace. We keep our heads down and our accounting perfect, and we survive." But survival felt like a slow death. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. 4 demerits, 8 away from the West Wing. 8 mistakes between me and whatever fate had befallen Ruth and the others. I thought of the names scratched into the plaster, the lights in the windows, the stiff, mechanical figure moving past the glass. What did he do to them in there? At 11:30, I heard his footsteps. Regular as clockwork, Mr. Ashford descended from his chambers and walked to the West Wing. The heavy door opened and closed. I rose from my bed and crept to my window. The 5 lights were burning again, one in each of the West Wing windows. and as I watched, I saw them dot figures, 5 of them, moving through the rooms in synchronized patterns, back and forth, like mechanical dolls wound too tight. One of them stopped directly in front of a window. Even from this distance, even in the dim candlelight, I recognized her. Ruth. She stood perfectly still, facing outward, her expression slack and empty. Then, slowly, she raised one hand and pressed it against the glass. Her lips moved, forming words I could not hear. Help us. I stumbled back from my window, my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. An hour later, Mr. Ashford emerged from the west wing. He locked the door behind him, tested it twice, and returned to the main house. The lights in the west wing went dark, all at once, as though snuffed by a single breath. In the morning, I was cleaning the study when I found it tucked beneath a stack of correspondence on Mr. Ashford's desk, a letter from a doctor in the city, dated 3 months prior. Dear Mr. Ashford, regarding your inquiry into treatments for hysteria and disorders of the female temperament, I am pleased to inform you that my experimental techniques have shown promising results. The combination of isolation, repetitive behavioral conditioning, and my patent solution has produced remarkably compliant subjects. As discussed, I can provide you with the necessary supplies and instructions for a modest fee. Your servant in medical progress, Dr. Harold Whitmore. My hands trembled as I set the letter down. He was not simply punishing them, he was changing them, breaking them, turning them into something less than human. The door to the study opened. Mr. Ashford stood in the doorway, and this time, he was not smiling. Grace, he said softly, I believe you have just earned your 5th demerit. 5 demerits, Grace, halfway to correction. Mr. Ashford closed the study door behind him with a quiet click. What am I to do with you? I stood frozen, the letter still visible on his desk between us. I was only dusting. Sir, the paper fell, and you were reading my private correspondence. His voice remained calm, almost sad. Just as you entered the locked room, just as you disturbed my ledger. You have such difficulty with boundaries. Please, sir, I did not mean intent is irrelevant. The rules exist regardless of intent. He moved past me to his desk, picked up the letter, folded it carefully. This is precisely why structure is necessary. Without it, people like you make poor choices. You pry into matters that do not concern you. You question authority. You forget your place. He sat down in his chair, regarding me with those pale eyes. My late wife suffered from the same affliction, excessive curiosity. She would wander the manor at night, asking questions, trying doors that should remain locked. The doctor explained that it was a disorder of the female mind, a kind of hysteria brought on by too much thinking, too much independence. He gestured to the letter. Dr. Whitmore helped her, in the end, helped her find peace and proper obedience. She is buried in the family plot, I whispered. Yes, eventually. A long pause. But first, she spent time in the West Wing, learning, becoming the proper wife she was always meant to be. Unfortunately, her constitution was weak. Not everyone survives the treatment, but those who do, well, you have seen them, have you not? Through your window. My blood turned to ice. They are so very obedient now, so very perfect in their duties. They never question, never stray, never accumulate demerits. He opened the ledger. You will submit your accounting this evening. It will include this infraction. And Grace, I suggest you become very, very careful in the coming weeks. 7 more demerits is not such a great distance to travel. He dismissed me with a wave. I fled to the servants' quarters, my heart hammering. 5 demerits. 5 steps closer to that horrible fate, to becoming one of those hollow-eyed figures moving through the West Wing like wound automatons. I had to do something. That afternoon, the new girl arrived. Diane Porter was perhaps 19 years old, with warm brown skin and eyes full of cautious hope. She carried a small canvas bag containing all her worldly possessions. When Mr. Ashford introduced her to the household, she curtsied nervously and thanked him for the opportunity. I felt sick watching her innocent smile. After Mr. Ashford left us, I pulled Diane aside. There are rules here, I said urgently. Very specific rules. You must follow them exactly. Of course, Mr. Ashford explained. I am to keep perfect accounting of my time and duties. It is more than that. You must be, I lowered my voice. You must be very careful. This place is not what it seems. Diane frowned. I do not understand. How could I explain? How could I tell her that our employer was conducting some terrible experiment, transforming disobedient servants into mindless puppets. She would think me mad. Just trust me. Keep your head down. Do not ask questions. Do not go near the West Wing. And if you accumulate demerits, Miss Grace is trying to frighten you. Thomas interrupted, appearing in the doorway. Pay her no mind. Simply do your work properly, and you will be fine. But his eyes met mine, and I saw the warning there. Do not interfere. Do not make things worse. That evening, I submitted my accounting with the 5th demerit, dutifully noted. I waited in my room, expecting Mr. Ashford to summon me for further punishment. Instead, there was a soft knock at my door. Evelyn entered, her face pale in the candlelight. Behind her came Thomas, and to my surprise, Diane. We need to talk, Evelyn said quietly. All of us. Thomas closed the door and wedged a chair beneath the handle. I have been here 2 years, he began, watching, counting, trying to understand the pattern. There have been 12 servants before us. All of them ended up in the West Wing. All of them reached exactly 12 demerits before being taken. How do you know this? I asked. Because I keep my own ledger. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Every name, every disappearance, every detail I could gather from town records and cemetery logs. He opened it, and I saw pages filled with careful notes. Mr. Ashford's wife, Catherine, died in 1891. The doctor who signed the death certificate was Harold Whitmorth, the same doctor from that letter you found. After Catherine's death, Mr. Ashford began hiring servants, young women, mostly. Occasionally a man, always people with few connections, little family, no one who would make trouble if they disappeared. The sheriff knows, Evelyn added. The Reverend knows, half the town knows, or suspects. But Mr. Ashford owns the timber mill that employs 1/3 of Graystone. He holds mortgages on half the properties. He donates to every charity, every church fund. Who would dare accuse him? I came here because I need this position, Diane said softly. My mother is sick. I send her most of my wages. When Mr. Ashford hired me, I thought it was an answer to prayer. Her voice cracked. But walking here today, I passed Mrs. Patterson in town. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. Her daughter worked here, I said, 5 years ago, and now she is in the West Wing. Thomas finished, along with Ruth, and the gardener before me, and the cook before Evelyn. All of them still alive, after a fashion. All of them trapped in whatever nightmare Ashford has created. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. We cannot run, Evelyn said. He will find us, bring us back, add demerits for desertion. We cannot go to the law, Thomas added. They will not listen to people like us, over a man like him. Then what can we do? Diane whispered. I thought of the letter, the doctor's patent solution, the experimental techniques. We need proof, I said slowly. Evidence that even the town cannot ignore. Something that shows exactly what he is doing in the West Wing. Something that would force them to act. And how do we get that? Evelyn asked. The West Wing is locked, always locked. I pulled out Mrs. Patterson's key. Not always. I have this, and I know when he goes there every 3rd night at 11 o'clock. Like clockwork, he stays for exactly 1 hour. You want to go inside? Thomas stared at me. While he is in there with them, I want to see what he is doing. Document it. Find evidence we can take to someone with the power to stop this. A judge in the county seat, perhaps, or a newspaper in the city. If he catches you, Evelyn started. If he catches me, I will end up like Ruth anyway. I am halfway to 12 demerits already. One way or another, I am running out of time. I looked at each of them. We are all running out of time. How many demerits before we all end up as those things in the windows? Diane was crying silently. Thomas's jaw was set. Evelyn's hands trembled. Tomorrow is the 3rd night, Thomas said finally. If we are going to do this, it must be then. I will keep watch, Evelyn offered. If he finishes early, I will signal you somehow. I will help search for evidence, Diane added, her voice stronger now. Whatever you need. We made our plan in whispers. We prepared for what might be our only chance. And as we parted for the night, I caught Thomas's arm. Why are you helping? I asked. You have kept your head down for 2 years. Why risk it now? His expression was grim. Because I am tired of being afraid. Because I am tired of watching good people disappear. And because 6 demerits is 6 too many. Better to fight while I still can. In my room that night, I barely slept. I thought of Ruth pressing her hand to the glass. Of the names scratched in the plaster. Of Mrs. Patterson's daughter, who never wrote again. Tomorrow night, We would enter the West Wing. Tomorrow night. We would learn the full truth of what Jonathan Ashford had been doing to his servants, and tomorrow night, one way or another, everything would change. The day passed in a haze of false normalcy. We performed our duties with mechanical precision. We submitted perfect accountings. We moved through the manor like ghosts, careful not to attract attention. Mr. Ashford seemed to sense nothing amiss. He went about his business, reviewed correspondence, took his afternoon walk through the grounds. At dinner, he was pleasant, even cheerful, commenting on how smoothly the household was running. "You see how much better things are when everyone follows the rules," he said to us as we served his meal. "Order begets peace. Obedience begets contentment." None of us met his eyes. At 11:15, I positioned myself in the hallway near my room. Thomas stood watch near the servants' entrance. Evelyn waited in the kitchen with a clear view of the main staircase. Diane remained in her room, ready to assist if needed. At precisely 11 o'clock, we heard Mr. Ashford's door open. His footsteps descended the stairs, measured and purposeful. We heard the jingle of his keys, the heavy lock of the West Wing door turning. The door opened and closed. I counted to 100, my heart threatening to break through my ribs. Then I moved. The West Wing door stood before me, solid and forbidding. I pulled out Mrs. Patterson's key, praying it would work on this lock as it had on the guest room. It did not fit. My stomach sank. Of course he would use a different key for the West Wing. Of course, try this. Thomas appeared beside me, holding out a larger iron key. I made an impression in wax last month when he left it on the hall table. Had a copy made in town. Been waiting for the right moment. The key slid into the lock, turned, clicked. The door swung open on silent hinges. Beyond was darkness, and a smell that made my gorge rise, chemicals and something sweetly rotten, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. We entered together, Thomas carrying a shuttered lamp that cast a thin beam of light. The corridor beyond was lined with doors, 5 on each side. From somewhere deeper in the wing came sounds, mechanical clicking, the whisper of movement, and underneath it all, a low humming that might have been machinery or might have been human voices. The first door was locked, so was the second, but the third opened when Thomas tried the handle. The room beyond was small and windowless. Against the far wall stood a narrow bed, and on that bed lay a figure in a grey servant's dress. Ruth. She lay perfectly still, her eyes open but unseeing, staring at the ceiling. Her chest rose and fell in regular, mechanical breaths. On the table beside her bed stood a bottle of clear liquid and a syringe. "Dear God," Thomas breathed. I moved closer. Ruth, can you hear me?" Her eyes did not shift. Her expression did not change, but her lips moved, forming words without sound. Can't stop. Must work. Must obey. Must not question. Over and over, the same words, like a prayer or a curse. On the wall beside her bed was a chart. Dates, times, dosages, a record of treatment. I pulled it down, folded it into my pocket. We moved to the next room. Here we found a young man I did not recognize, sitting upright in a chair facing the wall. His hands moved in repetitive motions, reaching forward, pulling back, reaching forward again, miming some task he had performed hundreds of times. "That is David," Thomas whispered, "the gardener before me. He has been here 18 months. Room after room revealed the same horror. 5 people total, each trapped in their own small cell, each caught in endless loops of compulsive behavior, speaking scripted phrases, performing phantom duties, their minds broken and reshaped into something that knew only obedience. We found medical equipment in a side chamber, bottles labeled with Dr. Whitmore's name, notebooks filled with observations, sketches of human heads with areas of the brain marked and labeled. I gathered everything I could carry, stuffing papers into my dress pockets. Then we heard voices. Mr. Ashford's voice, coming from the far end of the corridor, and another voice, frightened, educated, unfamiliar. "The treatment is progressing beautifully," the stranger said. "Another few weeks, and the new subject will be ready for household duties. Her will is nearly broken." "Excellent, Dr. Whitmore. And the others, stable, compliant." I see no signs of resistance. The combination of chemical intervention and behavioral conditioning has proven most effective. Thomas gripped my arm. They were coming closer. We ducked into one of the rooms, pressing ourselves against the wall beside the door. Through the crack, I could see Mr. Ashford and a thin man in a black suit walking slowly down the corridor. The one who concerns me is the new housemaid, Ashford said. Grace, she is too clever, too curious, already at 5 demerits. Ah, but those are often the most satisfying to break, Dr. Whitmore replied. The intelligent ones, when properly treated, make the most devoted servants. Their capacity for thought becomes channeled entirely toward obedience. Beautiful, really. How soon can we begin her treatment? 7 more demerits. You said, give her another week. She will make a mistake. They always do. Then we can begin. They paused directly outside our hiding place. You are certain the town will not interfere? Dr. Whitmore asked. The town understands the natural order of things. These are servants. Dr. Negroes, mostly, poor whites, people of no consequence. No one will miss them. No one will ask difficult questions. And if they do, Ashford's voice hardened. I own enough of this county to ensure those questions remain unasked. My hands clenched into fists. They moved on, their voices fading as they entered another room. We need to leave, Thomas whispered. Now, before they finished their rounds, we crept back toward the entrance, our arms full of stolen evidence. But as we reached the main door, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Evelyn appeared, her face panicked. He is coming back early. He told Dr. Whitmore he wanted to check something in his study. You have to get out now. Too late. The study door opened above us. Mr. Ashford's footsteps crossed the floor directly overhead. We were trapped. If we exited the west wing now, he would see us immediately. But if we stayed, Thomas made the decision for us. He pushed me and Evelyn back into the west wing and eased the door almost closed, leaving just a crack to see through. We waited in the darkness, barely breathing. Mr. Ashford descended the stairs. He paused at the base, his hand on the banister, as though sensing something amiss. He looked directly at the west wing door. For a moment, I was certain he could see us through the crack, certain he knew. Then Diane's voice called from the kitchen. Mr. Ashford, sir, I apologize for disturbing you, but there is a matter that requires your attention. A problem with the stove. Bless her. Brave, clever Diane, creating a distraction. Ashford sighed and turned toward the kitchen. Very well, show me. The moment he was out of sight, we fled the west wing. Thomas locked it behind us, and we scattered to our respective rooms like mice before a cat. In my room, I spread the stolen papers on my bed with shaking hands. Treatment schedules, dosage records, sketches of surgical procedures, letters between Ashford and Dr. Whitmore discussing subjects and experiments, a ledger recording the acquisition of materials, human beings reduced to items in an inventory. And beneath it all, a document that made my blood run cold. A contract between Ashford and a sanitarium in the city, an agreement to supply them with trained domestics servants who had undergone his experimental treatment and could be sold to wealthy families seeking perfectly obedient staff. He was not just breaking them for his own use, he was selling them. A soft knock at my door. I quickly hid the papers under my mattress. It was Thomas and Evelyn, their faces grim. We have the evidence, I said. Enough to prove what he is doing. Enough to Grace. Evelyn's voice was strange. You need to see something. She held out a piece of paper. My evening accounting, the one I had submitted before our plan. Scrawled across it in red ink were the words, Grace Holloway 7, new demerits, entered West Wing without permission, theft of private documents, conspiracy with other servants, total demerits, 12. Report to the main house immediately for correction. He had known, the entire time he had known. It is a trap, Thomas said. He is waiting for you. From somewhere in the manor, a bell began to ring. Mr. Ashford's voice called out, echoing through the halls. Grace, my dear, do not keep me waiting. Your treatment begins tonight. The bell continued to ring, each chime like a nail driven into a coffin lid. Do not go. Evelyn gripped my arm. We will find another way. We will run, all of us together. He will catch us, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You know he will. And then we will all end up in the West Wing. Better to try than to walk willingly into that horror. But I was thinking of the papers hidden under my mattress. The evidence we had risked everything to obtain. If I disappeared into the West Wing tonight, it would all be for nothing. Listen to me, I said urgently. At first light, Thomas, you take these documents to the county seat. Find the circuit judge. His name is Harrison. I saw it on a legal notice in town. Give him everything. Make him listen. He won't listen to me, Thomas said bitterly. I am a colored man accusing a wealthy white landowner of he will listen to the evidence. And if he will not, find a newspaper. Find anyone who will expose this. I pressed the papers into his hands. Please, you are the only one fast enough to reach town before Ashford notices you are gone. Grace, Evelyn, Diane, if I am not back by morning, you know what to do. Get out. Warn anyone who will listen. Do not let him do to others what he has done to those people in the West Wing. The bell rang again. Closer now. Mr. Ashford was descending the stairs. I am going to face him, I said, but I am not going quietly. I walked out of my room before fear could paralyze me. Mr. Ashford stood at the base of the stairs, Dr. Whitmore beside him. The doctor carried a black leather bag, the kind physicians use for house calls. Both men were smiling. Ah, Grace, how prompt you are. Ashford consulted his pocket watch. 12 demerits. I confess, I did not expect you to reach this milestone quite so quickly, but curiosity has always been your weakness. You knew we were in the West Wing. Of course I knew. Do you think I am unaware of every movement in my own house? I allowed you to enter. I wanted you to see, to understand what awaits those who refuse to learn their place. He gestured toward the West Wing door. Come now. Dr. Whitmore has prepared everything for your treatment. If you cooperate, the process will be much less unpleasant. No. The word hung in the air between us. Ashford's smile faltered. I beg your pardon. I said no. I will not go quietly into that wing. I will not submit to your torture. I will not become one of your hollow puppets. You do not have a choice. Grace, you violated the rules. You accumulated 12 demerits. The consequences are clear. The rules are lies, I said, my voice rising. Justifications for cruelty. You use them to control people, to break them, to turn them into slaves for your profit. I saw the contract. I know you are selling them. Dr. Whitmore chuckled. Such spirit. She will require an extra dose of the sedative, I think. You are not a doctor, I said to him. You are a monster playing at medicine. Those people in the West Wing are not patients. They are victims of torture. They are being helped, Whitmore replied smoothly. Cured of their defiance, their inappropriate pride, their unwillingness to accept their proper station. I am perfecting techniques that will benefit society greatly. Imagine a servant class that never questions, never complains, never desires anything beyond their duty. It is the natural evolution of the social order. It is slavery dressed up in the language of science. Ashford's expression hardened. Enough of this, doctor. The chloroform, if you please. Whitmore reached into his bag. Help! I screamed at the top of my lungs. Someone help me. Murder! Help! My voice echoed through the manor, through the windows, out into the night. Ashford lunged forward to silence me, but I darted backward, still screaming. Help! They are killing people. The West Wing, help! Thomas burst from the servants' quarters, not alone but with Evelyn and Diane. They positioned themselves between me and Ashford. You will all return to your rooms immediately, Ashford commanded, or you will join Grace in treatment. No. Thomas stood firm. We are done following your rules. You forget yourself. I forget nothing. Thomas's voice was hard as iron. I remember every person you have destroyed, every life you have broken. My own sister worked here 3 years ago. Mary, she was 16. You took her into that wing, and she never came out the same. She could not even remember her own name when you finally sent her away. Ashford's face went pale. Your sister failed to adapt to proper service. She was returned to. You sold her to a brothel in the city. Thomas roared, because even your precious treatments could not break her completely, so you disposed of her like trash. I came here to find out what happened to her. I stayed because I was afraid, but I am not afraid anymore. Outside, I heard voices, shouts. My screaming had woken the neighbors. A farmhouse stood a quarter-mile down the road. Lights were appearing in the distance. You have made a grave mistake, Ashford said coldly. He turned to Whitmore. We must secure the West Wing. Remove any evidence of too late, I said. The evidence is already gone. By morning, it would be in the hands of the county judge. Ashford's mask finally cracked. Rage twisted his features into something ugly and terrible. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you have done. The judge is my cousin. The sheriff is my employee. There is no authority in this county that does not answer to me. Your little theft means nothing. Perhaps, I said, but Mrs. Patterson's daughter meant something to her, and Mary meant something to Thomas, and all those people in the West Wing meant something to someone. You have been preying on people you thought were powerless, people you thought no one would miss, but we are not nothing, and we will not be silent anymore. The front door burst open. 3 men stood there, farmers from the neighboring property, armed with rifles. We heard screaming. One said, looking between us with confusion, "Miss, are you all right?" Before Ashford could speak, I said clearly, "My name is Grace Holloway. I am being held against my will. There are 5 people imprisoned in the west wing of this house, subjected to medical torture. I have evidence of crimes committed by Mr. Ashford and Dr. Whitmore. I am asking for your help as witnesses and protection." "This is absurd," Ashford said smoothly, his composure returning. "This girl is a hysterical servant who has been dismissed for theft. She is inventing wild stories." "Then let us see the west wing," one of the farmers interrupted. He was an older man, and I saw recognition in his eyes. "My niece worked here once, 2 years back. She came home changed, would not speak of what happened, just stared at walls and whispered about obedience." "If you have nothing to hide, Mr. Ashford, let us see." Ashford's hand moved toward his pocket toward a gun. I realized with sudden terror. But Thomas was faster. He grabbed Ashford's wrist and twisted hard. A small pistol clattered to the floor. Dr. Whitmore tried to flee toward the back of the house, but Diane tripped him. He went sprawling, his black bag spilling open, bottles and syringes scattering across the floor. The farmers took control quickly. They bound Ashford and Whitmore while Evelyn ran to fetch the sheriff. Unreliable though he might be, with witnesses present, he would have no choice but to respond, and I led them to the west wing. We opened every door. We brought Ruth and the others out into the light. The farmer stared in horror at the treatment rooms, the charts, the evidence of systematic torture disguised as medical care. One of them vomited. Another wept openly. On. The sheriff had arrived with 2 deputies. The county judge, Ashford's cousin or not, was summoned from his bed. A doctor from town examined the victims in the west wing and declared them to be suffering from drug-induced altered states and severe psychological trauma. And I stood before them all, my voice steady despite my exhaustion, and told the truth. Every detail, every rule, every demerit, every disappearance. I showed them the ledgers, the contracts, the letters between Ashford and Whitmore discussing their experiments in behavioral conditioning and mental reconstruction. I showed them the list of 12 servants who had entered the west wing, 5 who remained imprisoned there, 7 who had been sold or disposed of. The judge's face grew grayer with each revelation. "This is a mistake," Ashford kept saying, his voice losing its smoothness, becoming shrill. "A misunderstanding. These people are servants. They consented to what?" The judge interrupted. "To be drugged, to be tortured, to have their minds broken and their bodies sold." He looked at his cousin with undisguised revulsion. "Jonathan, what have you done?" "I was creating order," Ashford whispered. "Perfect order, perfect obedience. They should have been grateful. They should have taken him away," the judge said quietly, as the deputies led Ashford and Dr. Whitmore out in chains. Ashford turned back to look at me one final time. "You have destroyed everything," he said. "For what? You are still nothing. You will always be nothing." I met his eyes steadily. "I am Grace Holloway," I said, "and I am free." The trial lasted 3 weeks. The courtroom in the county seat was packed each day with people from Graystone and beyond. Families of the missing came forward, one after another, telling their stories. Mrs. Patterson testified about her daughter. Thomas testified about his sister Mary. We learned that there had been more victims than we knew. People taken over the course of 5 years, their fates hidden beneath Ashford's veneer of respectability. The evidence we had stolen from the West Wing proved damning. Dr. Whitmore's notes detailed experiments in breaking the will and reconditioning the inferior classes. Ashford's ledgers showed payments received for trained domestics sold to households across 3 states. Most horrible of all were the victims themselves. Ruth and the others from the West Wing were brought before the court. They could barely speak coherently. They moved in those terrible mechanical patterns, their minds so damaged that physicians doubted they would ever fully recover. When the verdict came, there was no celebration, only a heavy, sorrowful relief. Jonathan Ashford was sentenced to life imprisonment for kidnapping, assault, and conspiracy to commit slavery. Dr. Harold Whitmore received 25 years for his role in the torture, the sanitarium that had been purchasing. Ashford's victims was investigated and shut down. 7 more people were found there, subjected to similar treatments. The facility's directors fled before they could be arrested. Ashford's estate was seized and sold. Part of the proceeds went to the victims and their families. The west wing was torn down completely, burned to ashes. The manor itself stood empty for a time, before being converted into a hospital for the poor. As for us, the 4 servants who had survived, we each found our own path forward. Thomas used his portion of the settlement to establish a boarding house for colored workers in the city. He found his sister Mary, living in terrible conditions, and brought her home. With care and time, she began to remember who she had been before Ashford broke her. Evelyn returned to her family in Virginia. Last I heard, she had married a good man and was teaching school to children who would otherwise have no education. Diane stayed in Graystone and became a voice for reform, speaking at churches and town halls about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of protecting the vulnerable. And I have spent these months writing, documenting every detail of our ordeal, ensuring that the truth is preserved, not just in court records but in plain language that anyone might understand. Judge Harrison, to his credit, proved to be a man of genuine conscience. He had known his cousin was eccentric, he told me, but never imagined the depths of his cruelty. He used his influence to push for new laws protecting domestic workers, requiring regular inspections of large estates, and criminalizing the kinds of medical experiments Whitmore had conducted. It is not enough. Laws alone will not change hearts, but it is a start. Ruth visits me sometimes. She is living with her sister now, in a small cottage with a garden. Her mind remains fractured, but she has moments of clarity. During one such moment, she took my hand and whispered, "You saved us. You were brave when I could not be." I told her that she had been brave too, that surviving what she had endured required its own kind of courage. But the truth is, I do not feel brave. I feel exhausted, changed. I carry nightmares of that west wing, of the mechanical movements and empty eyes. I wake sometimes hearing that bell ringing, summoning me to correction. Yet I also carry something else. I carry the knowledge that even when power seems absolute, even when the rules seem unbreakable, even when you are told you are nothing, you can still resist. You can still fight. You can still win. Not always. Not without cost. But sometimes I have been asked to speak at universities and reform societies about my experience. I decline most invitations. This journal, this record, is my testimony. Let it speak for me. Today I visited the site where the West Wing once stood. It is winter now, and snow covers the ground where those terrible rooms had been, clean and white and quiet. I stood there for a long time, thinking of all the names carved into the plaster, all the people who had suffered in silence, all the voices that had been stolen. Then I spoke their names aloud, each one, letting the winter air carry them away like prayers. Mary Catherine Wells, Elizabeth Foster. James Hartley, Sarah Mitchell, Daniels. And all the others whose names I never learned. You are remembered, I told them. You mattered. You are not nothing. The snow fell softly, covering my footprints as I walked away. Closing note, added by County Archivist, June 1942. This journal was discovered among the effects of Grace Holloway following her death at age 71. She lived a long life in quiet dignity, never married, and worked as an advocate for workers' rights until her retirement. She requested in her will that this account be preserved in the county archives, with the notation, so that future generations might remember that cruelty often wears a respectable face, and that the powerless are never as powerless as their oppressors believe. The ledger of silence has been closed. Let it never be opened again. In accordance with her wishes, this document is now part of the permanent historical record of Graystone County. May those who read it remember. May they learn. May they never forget that one. Woman's courage can expose darkness that has festered for years. The story of Grace Holloway stands as testament to the strength of the humble, the power of truth, and the unstoppable force of a quiet, dignified soul who refused to be broken. The end. Thank you for journeying through this story with us. If you were moved by Grace's courage and want to hear more tales of forgotten histories and quiet heroes, please subscribe to our channel. Drop a comment below, telling us where you're watching from and what spoke to you most in this story. Remember, history is filled with voices that tried to be silenced. Let us never stop listening for them.